Fareed Zakaria, he decided that, hey, who needs facts when I got feelings? Let me just put up a piece of propaganda. Let's all gander at it together. There's a whole lot that we have to say about this video, but you should see it first. Let's play it.
Here's my take. The prospect of Bernie Sanders becoming the Democratic nominee has startled many people who worry that his brand of democratic socialism won't sell and would pave the way for a second Trump term. This might well be true, but surely the more important question is not whether his programs would be popular, but whether, in fact, they're good programs. It's time to stop grading Bernie Sanders on a curve and start asking what the country would look like if he would have become president.
On a curve?
Let's consider the topic that he argues is the single greatest challenge facing America and a global emergency: climate change.
Yeah, it is.
Sanders wants to commit the United States to achieving 100% renewable energy for electricity and transportation by 2030.
Okay.
This is a laudable, though ambitious goal. The question is, how will he go about meeting it? U.S. carbon emissions fell almost 15% from 2005 to 2016. According to Carbon Brief, the single largest cause for that was the switch from coal-fired power plants to natural gas ones, 33% of the reduction. The adoption of solar power, by contrast, accounted for just 3%. Nevertheless, Bernie Sanders is opposed to natural gas. He opposes all new fracking, and he seeks to ban it nationwide within 5 years. He also intends to shut down rapidly all gas plants. Now, wind and solar account for less than 5% of U.S. energy consumption. So his plan would require an exponential jump in renewables in just
America
a few
can't do
years. And even if that happened, it would be extremely difficult to replace gas as a source for electricity. You see, solar and wind are intermittent sources, so they require a backup source in order to provide electricity to homes, offices, and factories
Really?
24/7.
We've never heard of any of
Sanders
these ideas.
has a solution.
Please tell us why they're
Storage.
so bad.
And if we had the means to store electricity on a massive scale, such as in batteries, there would be no longer need for backup power. But we are not even close to having the kind of storage capacity we would need to make this work.
So why bother,
One example,
right?
the Clean Air Task Force calculated that just for California to reach 100% electricity from renewables, it would need 36.3 million megawatt hours of energy storage. The whole state currently has just 150,000 megawatt hours of storage.
One's interesting. I'll put a point up.
Now, there is another path to clean energy, a source that has zero carbon emissions and provides a continuous flow of electricity.
All right,
Nuclear power.
Yeah, let's end this.
Okay,
guy.
so
Yeah, he goes on about nuclear power, and I had points on that too, but it's
I'm
less
actually,
interesting.
I think I'm like the only guy up here that I like nuclear energy more than most. But that's again, like, still broken out. The exclusion zone around a nuclear power plant, if you filled that area with solar panels, would produce more energy than the nuclear plant itself. So there's a lot of different things. But there's a couple points on this that I want to make. First of all, this is this tried and true method that I'm calling America isn't great. We can't do anything. We can't accomplish great things. We should just stop, not even try. Method of talking to people, which isn't very charismatic. You're basically telling your viewing audience that we're just not capable. America can't transform its economy. We're just not great enough. We're not good enough at what we do. We can't build things or grow things.
Wait, do you mean it's ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what your country definitely will not do for you?
Yeah. So here's the other part of this that's very deceptive is the natural gas segment. Now, if you look into natural gas, like they're right, it's better than coal. But again, there's a giant asterisk that they never mention in any of this natural gas discussion. For every 1% of loss in the system of natural gas, that's natural gas leaking out, which is ubiquitous. I think the last number I remember was there's about a 14% leakage of natural gas in the entire system. That's methane. Methane is a much worse greenhouse gas than CO2. So what they're doing is they're saying, hey, when we pull the natural gas out of the ground in a perfect system with no leaks and no issues, transport it to get refined, refine it, and then put it in heating or vehicles or whatever, it's very, very clean in comparison to all this other stuff. That's a true statement. I'm not going to deny. It's not obviously not as clean as nuclear, wind, solar, etc., but it's better than regular oil. It burns quick. It's just a better chemical burn that's more pure. The problem is that for every percentage of natural gas that escapes into the atmosphere, you add 2% carbon emission to the entire U.S. And again, so if you add in the leakage of the natural gas system, it's actually much more polluting than coal. But they don't ever bring that up.
There's a simpler point to make
Yeah.
on natural gas, and that's just it is definitely not zero emissions, right?
Yeah.
Like if the goal is zero emissions, why are you like, hey, but we switched from this type of fuel to this other type of fuel. Look how much we saved. Let's just do more of that and we'll save more. It's like, no,
No,
but zero,
that's not how
right?
things work.
Do you understand the concept of zero?
Right.
And so I just want to add a couple
Yeah,
more
go
things
ahead.
very quickly on natural. So you have, then they're saying, oh, well, we don't have a lot of storage. Now, you saw those Tesla batteries in there.
Yeah.
Those are very important. And I'm going to actually go with what happened in Australia because I'm more familiar with those numbers. Tesla put a very small, relatively, it was the biggest battery plant ever created on Earth, but comparatively to what we're talking about, very, very small in Australia. And that was because the coal plants that they were actually planning to build, I think, 4 more coal plants in the southern part of Australia where this happened because of the peak usage and very hot days would just overwhelm. It would just grow too fast for the coal plants to heat up. So if they just added in this one battery station, again, biggest on the planet, but small relatively. It was like 150 battery storage units that just were they activated enough to power the grid for 1 or 2 minutes. Just doing that, nothing else, stabilized the grid to such a point that they didn't need to build those four coal power plants. So that point is just saying that, hey, don't knock a small amount of battery. Just that small amount makes an enormous difference in stabilizing the grid and requiring a lot less fossil fuels. But further, it's not just batteries. The problem is, if you want to build a battery or a storage, whether it's gravity-based, water-based, whatever system you want to use, to get the size they're talking about, you need the government to say, I need something that's this big. No private company and no state is going to do that on their own. So the fact that he's saying it hasn't been done, it just means the federal government hasn't asked for it to be done. Because in China, they're doing a hell of a lot with renewables. Granted, they're also doing a lot with coal, but they're doing a hell of a lot with renewables, and they will probably own that future at the rate that they're going.
What's the list of countries that is at zero emissions now? I mean, it's
a few.
There are a few. There are. I mean, granted, smaller countries, but obviously
it
not
can
impossible.
Be done.
Yeah,
It can
exactly.
be done. And here's something else too, because I'm glad you brought those numbers about the gas emissions as well as the Tesla batteries. But there was something else that stood out to me in that video, and that is, Bernie Sanders is against fracking. Well, let's remember the danger of fracking and what it does. Myself and Daniel, we did a short documentary about the toxic tour in Indiana. It's a completely different thing. But in regards to it, there was a threat to Lake Michigan. That is, you have these large refinery facilities dumping regulated toxic waste into a large body of fresh water. Now, fracking, on the other hand, it does something even far more worse. It impacts underground water reservoirs.
And creates earthquakes.
Yeah. And the thing is that water is no longer drinkable. In fact, there's documentaries of it where people are actually lighting the water on fire.
Hey, that's super safe. Way less pollution.
Wow,
Again,
wow.
unless it leaks out.
Unless it leaks out. But the thing
as
is,
soon as it leaks out, it's more polluting than coal.
but it's more prone. But here's the thing: it's always led to failure. All the water
Yeah.
reservoirs around any fracking area has been contaminated. And the thing is that water is very precious, and climate change is a real threat to the human species. It's a fact. We're going to have to deal with it. And if we don't have access to fresh, clean drinking water, I hate saying this, and I don't like seeing people get hurt, but a lot of people are going to get sick, hurt, and there's going to be a mass migration because if the water is no longer viable, people will move, and there will be a massive humanitarian crisis here in the United States if we continue to frack, because it's going to damage our ecosystems, and those communities will be devastated for years to come. And I don't even know what the cleanup process looks like or how much money we'll be wasting just to spend to clean up all the fracking. I mean, this has to stop. So with that being said, I think we have to remember that Bernie Sanders is trying to fight for that better future, but yet you have these corporate media pundits who are saying, why fight for a better future and make a better world when it leads to nothing at all, right? Because that's your friends at CNN.
But my
why
stock
bother?
portfolio is heavily in coal and natural gas, so that must be the right solution.
Yeah.
It's like, what if we make a better planet for nothing?
Well, here's a good point. Here, I just got one. You know what's super ironic of this entire discussion? The fact that they're like, oh yeah, it's super easy to dig for something that could be miles underneath the ground, build an entire infrastructure of pipes putting it together, build refineries that then process it and then redistribute. Oh, that's really easy to do. But, producing big batteries, that's hard.
Daniel, that's a bridge too far.